When it comes to Christian counseling, good intentions just aren't enough, not by a long shot. Integrity, well, that's everything. And to show you exactly what I mean, let's jump right into a real-life story.
Okay, so picture this. You're trying to find a therapist. You make a call, and the guy on the other end seems like he knows his stuff. But then he says something that just stops you in your tracks. He offers to give you the names and phone numbers of his current clients. Yeah, you heard that right. He wants you to call them up for a review. I mean, on the surface, maybe that sounds helpful, but you get that feeling in your gut, something is just really off about this.
So the person on the phone, instead of just hanging up, takes a breath and asks this incredibly simple but really powerful question. It's a gentle way of pushing back, for sure, but man, it cuts right to the heart of how shocking that request really was. And here's the thing, that request, it wasn't just a little unprofessional. No way. It was a massive ethical failure. I mean, it completely blows client confidentiality out of the water and just shows this guy has no clue about the kind of trust that therapy is built on. And that whole story, really, it perfectly sets the stage for why we desperately need clear guidelines in counseling.
I mean, just think about it for a second. When people go to counseling, they're often at their most vulnerable. They're confused, they're hurting, they share things they've maybe never said out loud to anyone. That counseling room, it becomes this really intimate, almost sacred space. And that means the counselor has this huge responsibility to guard that space with absolute, unwavering integrity.
So, how do you actually build that framework of trust? Well, the good news is, counselors aren't just winging it. They're not left to figure this all out on their own. There are professional codes of ethics. You can think of them as the rules of the road, and they're there to protect everyone involved, the client and the therapist.
And what's really interesting about these codes is they're kind of broken into two different levels. First, you've got what are called mandatory obligations. Think of this as the floor. It's the bare minimum standard. The goal here is simple, do no harm. But then you have the aspirational ideals. This is the ceiling. These are the big, overarching principles that push counselors to aim for the greatest possible good.
And these codes, they cover a ton of ground. I mean, they're really comprehensive. Big organizations like the American Psychological Association have standards for pretty much everything, from making sure a therapist is actually competent, to guaranteeing your privacy, to even helping navigate those really tricky situations, like what do you do when your client is also someone you see at church every week? That's what we call a multiple relationship, and there are rules for that.
Okay, so we have the rules, but for a Christian counselor, just checking the boxes isn't enough. It's not the whole story. Those professional codes, they're the foundation, for sure, but a faith-based approach calls for something more. It's about living out specific theological virtues that really shape the entire practice from the inside out.
And the first big idea here is viewing counseling as a calling. This one idea completely reframes everything. Suddenly, it's not just a job you clock in and out of. It becomes a vocation, a true act of service. The work itself is a kind of ministry, really, a way to show God's love to people in the middle of their pain.
And that idea of a calling leads right into this next one, thinking about the therapeutic relationship as a covenant, not just a contract. A contract is, well, it's a professional agreement. But a covenant? That's so much deeper. It's about a relationship built on real trust, on loyalty, and on this deep personal commitment to the other person's good.
And then there's the principle of justice. This is huge. It's all about treating every single person with fairness and protecting their dignity. I love how one theologian put it. They said that in therapy, justice gives backbone to love. It's a great image, right? It means that care isn't just some mushy feeling, it's an action. It's about actively working for fairness and fixing things that are unfair.
All right, so we've got the rules, the floor, and we've got these higher principles, the ceiling. But let's be real, life is messy. These ethical problems are almost never black and white. They live in the gray areas. So let's dive into another, much more complex case and see how a counselor might actually work through one of these tough calls.
Okay, here's the scenario. A teenage client trusts his counselor enough to tell him he's using drugs. So, now what? The counselor is totally stuck between a rock and a hard place, right? On one hand, you have the duty of confidentiality. That's the entire foundation of their trust. But on the other hand, you've got a responsibility to his parents and, of course, to the kid's own safety. So what on earth is the right thing to do here?
This is exactly where having a solid framework for making decisions is so critical. A Christian counselor might look at this problem from 3 different angles. First is the normative perspective. What are the rules, the codes, and Scripture say my duty is? Second, the situational perspective. What action in this specific situation is going to lead to the best possible outcome? And then there's the third one, the existential perspective, which is really personal. Who do I need to be in this moment? What virtues, like wisdom or courage or love, do I need to draw on right now?
So by looking at it from all three angles, the counselor can make a much more thoughtful, much more ethical choice. And this gets us right back to the heart of the matter, to why all of this is so important. It's all about integrity.
Because at the end of the day, for that person sitting in the chair bearing their soul, all the right theology in the world doesn't mean a thing if they can't trust their counselor. Ethical practice is where faith gets real. It's where it becomes tangible. It's where a client can actually see and feel that faith in action in a way that feels safe and respectful and truly helpful.
And you know, all these rules, all these principles and frameworks, they all point back to one central command. When Jesus was asked to boil down the entire law, this was his answer. Love God with everything you have and love your neighbor as yourself. That's it. That's the ultimate aspirational goal. It's the North Star for all ethical behavior, whether you're in a counseling room or just living your life.
So we want to leave you with this to think about. In all those messy, gray areas of your own life, when the rule book doesn't have a clear answer, what guides you? What is the foundation you're standing on? And what kind of character are you building that will help you act with integrity no matter what?